I never thought I'd be the guy posting something like this, but here I am. My name's David, and I've been married to Emily for about 5 years now. We met in college, hit it off pretty fast, and I thought I knew everything about her, or at least I like to believe I did. She's always been a bit of a bitch, honestly. Sharp-tongued, quick to lie, but I thought that was just her personality. She's also gorgeous, confident, and the kind of girl every guy looks at twice. She knew how to turn on that charm, and honestly, I thought I was lucky to have her. Things weren't perfect, though. I'd started noticing little things, missed calls, secretive texts, weird hours she'd claim were work stuff or friends she's helping out. At first, I brushed it off. She'd always been a bit flaky, but I trusted her enough. Still, the gut feeling started to creep in. She'd come home late, smelling like perfume I didn't recognize, and she'd get defensive if I asked questions. I didn't want to think the worst, but something just felt off. Then came the day that changed everything, or at least I think it did. It was the day of my grandmother's funeral. We were at the cemetery, surrounded by family paying respects. Emily was acting a little weird that day, distracted, checking her phone constantly, which wasn't her style. Normally, she'd be the life of the party, cracking jokes, pulling some attention, but she was unusually quiet. I thought maybe she was just overwhelmed. Funerals do that to people. I didn't suspect anything sinister yet. Later that day, I found out that Emily had been acting even stranger after we got home. She started avoiding me, texting constantly, and I caught her slipping her phone into her purse right before bed. I didn't think much about it until I saw a message pop up on her screen, something about "can't wait to see you tonight," followed by a heart emoji. That was it. My stomach sank. I knew in that instant that she was cheating on me. The timing couldn't be more perfect, or worse, more horrible. During my grandma's funeral, during a time when I was vulnerable and mourning, she was out sneaking around with my own brother. I couldn't breathe. I sat there staring at that damn message for a long time, my mind spinning. I knew I had to confront her, but I didn't even know how to start. When I finally called her out, she denied everything at first, said I was paranoid, that I was imagining things, that her phone was just for work. But I knew better. I knew what I saw. She was lying through her teeth, throwing her bitchy attitude at me, trying to dismiss it. Her words were always full of excuses like "you're just jealous," or "you don't trust me," but I didn't need her to trust me. I saw the truth plain as day. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying the moments, trying to find some false clue I missed, some sign I ignored. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and utterly broken. I mean, how could she? During one of the worst days of my life, losing my grandma, she was out having sex with my brother. It felt like my entire world was crashing down around me. And the worst part, I knew she was pregnant now with his kid. I found out later that she was actually pregnant, and I swear, the moment I heard, it felt like the ground beneath me was crumbling. The betrayal hit so hard because I trusted her. I told her everything, shared my hopes and dreams, built a life with her. And now I realized that everything was a lie. She lied about the little things, the big things, and I was just supposed to accept it. Not a chance. I kept asking myself how I didn't see it coming, how I was so blind to the signs. Maybe I was too in love, maybe I was a fool, but I genuinely thought we had something real. Turns out she was just playing me for a fool while she was out screwing my brother behind my back. That's when I started planning my revenge, though I didn't quite see it that way at first. I just knew I couldn't let her get away with it. I had to do something, anything, to make her pay for what she did. I couldn't stay in that house, surrounded by her lies, feeling like I was just some idiot who got played. The betrayal was too deep. I began plotting, quietly, carefully, waiting for the right moment to strike. I wasn't sure what I'd do exactly, but I knew I had to make her see the pain she caused me. I had to make her regret ever crossing me. That's where I'm at now, trying to figure out how to move forward from here. I feel like I lost everything, my family, my trust, my sense of security, and I don't know if I'll ever fully recover. All I know is I'm not going to let her get away with it, not without her feeling some of the pain she handed me. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know that she's pregnant with his kid, and that's the last straw. I'm not sure how I'm going to fix this, if I even can, but I promise she'll regret ever crossing me. After I found out about Emily's affair and her pregnancy, everything in my world shifted. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't even sit still without feeling this burning rage inside me. The betrayal was so raw, so vivid, I started questioning every moment we'd ever shared. I kept replaying the last few months, searching for signs I'd ignored, small things she'd said or done that suddenly made sense now. It was like the entire foundation of my life was built on lies, and I was only just starting to realize how deep the deception went. I began monitoring her more obsessively, not in a creepy way, but just enough to catch her off guard. I wanted her to know I wasn't some fool who'd take her cheating quietly. I didn't tell anyone yet, just kept it all inside, letting the anger simmer. I didn't want her to suspect I knew everything. I had to come up with a plan, a way to confront her that would give me some measure of control. Because right now I felt completely powerless. One night I decided to check her phone again. I knew it was risky, but I couldn't help myself. I waited until she was asleep, then grabbed her phone from the nightstand. I knew her passcode, she'd been careless and never changed it. I scrolled through her messages, emails, everything I could find. It was like opening a Pandora's box. I found dozens of texts, some dirty, some innocent, but the tone was clear. She was sneaking around, hiding something. Then I saw the message that confirmed it all, an explicit photo of her with my brother, tagged with the exact date of the funeral. I almost vomited. That image burned into my mind like a brand. My wife in bed with my own flesh and blood during my grandmother's funeral, no less. I felt my fists clench so tight it hurt. How could she do this? How could she betray me like that? I thought about confronting her then and there, but I knew it wouldn't be that simple. I needed proof, a real plan, because she was manipulative as hell. She'd lie her way out of anything, but I was done playing nice. I wanted her to know I wasn't some fool anymore. I wanted her to feel the pain she'd caused me, the betrayal that cut so deep it still hurt every second. The next day, I started gathering evidence. I contacted a private investigator I knew, someone I trusted, to dig into Emily and her activities, especially around the time of the funeral. I needed proof beyond just the messages, something undeniable. I couldn't risk her denying everything again. Meanwhile, she kept up her act, pretending to be the perfect wife, acting like nothing was wrong. But I saw through her. I saw the flicker of guilt in her eyes sometimes, but mostly she was just bitchy and defensive, throwing tantrums when I asked questions or tried to get her to open up. Throughout all this, I felt an ocean of mixed emotions: anger, sadness, disgust, and a strange sense of numbness. I couldn't even cry properly. I just felt hollow. How could she do this? How could she betray me during my grandmother's funeral when we were supposed to be mourning? That day I lost my entire family. My grandmother, who meant everything to me, and now my wife and brother, who I thought I could trust with my life. I kept asking myself what I did wrong, what I could have done differently. The answer was nothing. She was just a cheater, a liar, a manipulative bitch who saw me as nothing more than a convenience. I started planning my revenge. I needed her to feel the same pain I felt, maybe even more. I wanted her to know what it was like to be betrayed, to be humiliated. I didn't want to hurt her physically. I wasn't that kind of guy. But I wanted her to understand that her actions had consequences. I knew I couldn't just walk away quietly. That wouldn't be enough. I needed to make her regret ever crossing me. I decided I'd confront her with everything I'd found, let her see the evidence, make her own her lies. But I also knew I had to be smart about it. If I went in guns blazing, she'd just lie her way out and I'd be back to square one. So I waited, biding my time, watching her every move. I wanted to catch her in a lie, catch her slipping up again so I could expose her for good. The thought of her pregnant with my brother's kid made my stomach turn. Every time I thought about that, I felt the rage boiling over. That was the final straw. I never thought I'd be that guy, the one who'd lose everything, but I was starting to accept that maybe I'd have to do something drastic. Because at the end of the day, I wasn't going to let her destroy what was left of me without a fight. I kept telling myself I'd get through this, that I'd find a way to move on, but right now, all I could see was the betrayal, the lies, and the fact that my wife, the person I loved, had done this to me during the worst day of my life. It's hard to put into words how much that hurts. All I know is I'm not going to let her get away with it, not without a fight. After the initial shock started to wear off, I realized I had to keep my head clear. I couldn't just blow up and make a scene, at least not yet. My plan was to gather as much evidence as possible, confront her on my own terms, and then decide what to do next. I knew Emily's character well enough to understand she'd deny everything, spin some kind of sob story, and try to manipulate her way out of it. That's why I hired the private investigator. I needed undeniable proof, photos, recordings, anything that could be dismissed as a misunderstanding or misinterpretation. Meanwhile, Emily kept acting like everything was normal. She'd throw petty jabs, act bitchy whenever I pressed her about where she was working late or who she was texting. She'd get defensive, hurling accusations back at me. You're just paranoid. You don't trust me. You're jealous of my friends, all that bullshit. But I could see the cracks in her facade. She was trying to hide her guilt and the fact that she was scared I was onto her. That, or she was just a bitch who thought she could get away with anything. Either way, I wasn't giving her the satisfaction of seeing me break apart. One night I caught her slipping her phone again. I waited until she was in the shower, then snuck into the bedroom. I picked up her phone when she wasn't looking, unlocked it with her passcode, which I actually knew because she never changed it, and started scrolling. That's when I saw the full conversation, the explicit messages, the flirtatious texts, the late-night calls. But the worst part was the pictures of her completely naked, photos she sent to my brother. I couldn't believe how trashy she was being, how she just didn't care about the consequences anymore. I looked at her messages, her words like "can't wait to see you," "you're so good," and my stomach twisted. She'd been cheating on me for months, possibly longer, and I never saw it coming. I sat there trembling with rage. I wanted to break something, scream, destroy everything in my path. But I knew I had to stay calm. I printed out the messages, took screenshots of the photos, and hid them somewhere safe. I wasn't ready to confront her yet, not in the way I wanted at least. I needed more proof, and I needed time to figure out what I was going to say. I knew if I told her I knew everything, she'd just lie, deny, and turn the tables on me. So I decided to wait until I had everything in order. In the meantime, I kept observing her, watching her reactions and trying to gauge her level of guilt. Sometimes she'd snap at me over the smallest thing, calling me paranoid, saying I was crazy for accusing her of anything. But I could see she was nervous, more than she'd admit. She'd avoid certain conversations or change the subject as soon as I brought something up. I knew she was starting to crack under the pressure. Still, she'd lie, and I could tell she was trying to keep her composure, to hide that she was terrified I'd blow the lid off everything. One day, I snapped. I couldn't take it anymore. I called her out in front of some friends just to see how she'd react. I pointed out her strange behavior, her phone calls late at night, her sudden mood swings. She looked at me with that bitchy smirk, trying to dismiss it all, but I saw the flicker of panic in her eyes. That's when I knew I had her cornered. She'd been so cocky, so sure she could keep her lies going, but now she was starting to panic. That was the moment I decided I'd confront her directly. I wasn't going to let her keep stringing me along anymore. That evening, I sat her down in our living room. I pulled out the printed evidence, laid it on the table. Her face froze as she saw the screenshots, the photos. For a second, she just stared at them, her bitchy attitude vanishing for a moment. Then she started crying, fake tears, I knew, but I played along. I asked her questions, forced her to admit what I already knew. She tried to lie her way out, spinning some story about being lonely, missing something in her life, or being drunk that night. She had the nerve to call it just sex, as if that somehow justified everything she did. I couldn't believe the audacity of her lying so openly. I felt a mixture of disgust and fury. How could she be so callous? How could she betray me during my grandmother's funeral, that day I was supposed to mourn and honor my family? And now she's pregnant with my brother's kid. I didn't even know what to feel anymore: anger, heartbreak, disappointment. I was so angry at her, but I also felt so broken inside. It was like I'd lost everything: my wife, my brother, my family, my sense of trust. The person I thought I knew was nothing but a manipulative, cheating bitch. And I knew deep down that I couldn't just forgive her. Not after what she did, not after the way she lied and betrayed me in the worst way possible. I decided I'd had enough. I told her I was done, that I couldn't stay married to someone who could do this to me. I was prepared to walk away, to start over, no matter how hard it was. I was done being the naive husband who believed everything she said. I wanted her to feel the full weight of her actions, to see that I wasn't some pushover. I wanted her to regret ever crossing me. That night, I went to bed alone, staring at the ceiling, knowing that my life had forever changed. The betrayal was too deep, and I knew I'd carry this pain with me forever, but I also knew I had to move on somehow. The days that followed were the worst of my life. I felt like I was walking around in a daze, like my world was shattered into 1,000 tiny pieces I couldn't pick up. Every time I saw Emily, I saw the betrayal in her eyes, mocking, contemptuous, full of lies. She kept insisting it was just a mistake, that she didn't mean for everything to come out like this, but I knew better. I knew that she knew exactly what she was doing and she didn't care. The pregnancy, the affair, she'd already chosen her side and didn't even try to hide it anymore. I moved out of the bedroom, sleeping on the couch, just to get some space. I needed to clear my head, figure out what I was going to do next. I started seeing a counselor, not really to forgive her, but to help me deal with what had happened. I'd been a mess, angry, hurt, completely lost. I kept asking myself how I let this happen, how I was so blind to her lies. I saw her call my brother a few times, and each time I felt like I was going to lose it. That bastard, too. I couldn't believe I'd been so clueless, so naive, to think that I had a real family. One thing I didn't expect was how cruel she could be. Emily, that bitch, started turning everyone against me. She told her friends I was controlling, paranoid, and jealous. She painted me as the villain, trying to make me look like the crazy one. I overheard some of her friends say I was overreacting, that maybe I should just accept that she'd moved on. It was like watching my entire life unravel all over again. I couldn't believe how she was twisting everything, how she was trying to ruin my reputation just to save her own ass. That's when I realized she had no conscience, no remorse. She was just a manipulative, bitchy liar who'd do anything to save herself. Meanwhile, I kept digging for more proof. I hired the investigator to find out if she was seeing someone else, whether she'd been sneaking around before the funeral. Turns out, she'd been seeing my brother secretly for at least 6 months. I found photos, texts, even receipts from hotels they'd booked. The full extent of her betrayal was staggering. She'd been lying, cheating, and screwing around with my own family while I was mourning my grandmother. I felt so disgusted I could hardly breathe. How could she do this? How could she be so heartless? I started questioning everything. I questioned my own judgment, my ability to trust anyone again. I remember that night vividly. I sat on the floor, staring at all the evidence I'd collected. My hands were trembling as I looked at the photos of her in bed with my brother, their texts full of promises and lust. The rage inside me was boiling over, but I knew I had to control it. I couldn't afford to lose my temper, at least not yet. I had to be smart. If I lost control, I'd ruin everything. So I just sat there, feeling the weight of betrayal crushing me. I wondered how she could be so cold, so calculating, as if I was nothing more than some obstacle she had to get past to get what she wanted. I started thinking about revenge, about how to make her pay for what she did. Not physically, I wasn't that kind of guy, but in a way that would burn her from the inside out. I wanted her to feel the same pain I was feeling, maybe even more. I knew I had to be strategic. I couldn't just storm into her house and scream at her. She'd just lie her way out, deny everything, and turn the story around. Instead, I planned to expose her in front of everyone she cared about. I wanted her to see the destruction she'd caused, to feel the shame of her lies. I wanted her to know I wasn't going to let her get away with this. The hardest part was accepting that I'd lost my wife, my family, everything I'd ever known. I kept asking myself if I could ever forgive her, if I even wanted to. Honestly, I didn't. Not after what she did, how she used me as some pawn in her game of lies, but I also knew I had to be careful. Revenge isn't always the answer, but in my case, it felt like the only thing that could give me some form of closure. I just didn't know how to start. One thing I did realize, though, was that I had to focus on myself now. I couldn't let her ruin me entirely. I started seeing a therapist to help me process everything. I leaned on a few friends, people I could trust, to get through the days when the pain was just too much. I kept telling myself I'd get through this, that eventually I'd find a way to move on. But right now, all I could see was the betrayal, the lies, and the fact that the woman I loved, the woman I thought loved me, had done this during the worst day of my life. It's like she took everything that mattered and just tore it apart for her own selfish reasons. And somehow I was supposed to just accept that. No way. I'd make her regret crossing that line, no matter what it took. The weeks turned into a blur of anger, pain, and cold calculation. I realized I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay, not with the amount of evidence I had amassed. My plan was coming together slowly but surely. I knew I had to confront Emily again, but this time I had to be prepared. I didn't want her to spin her lies or manipulate her way out of it. I wanted her to see that I knew everything, every secret, every lie, every moment she thought I was clueless. I decided the best way to do this was to set a trap. I arranged for the investigator to follow her, to get photos of her with my brother, if they were still seeing each other, and to find out if she was planning to leave or go somewhere else. I also contacted a lawyer, just to understand my options, because I knew I'd need to make some tough decisions soon. I wasn't going to stay in a marriage built on lies, and I was no longer interested in any kind of reconciliation that wasn't genuine. Meanwhile, Emily kept up her bitchy, manipulative attitude. She tried to gaslight me, telling me I was crazy, that I was overreacting, that I was just jealous. She'd call me paranoid when I questioned her, but I knew better. I could see the cracks in her story, the hesitation when she lied, the way her eyes darted around like she had something to hide. It was all so predictable now. I wasn't the fool she thought I was. I was gathering everything I needed to make her see that I wasn't going to be played anymore. One night, she came home late again, smelling like perfume I recognized from a shelf in her bathroom, one I'd never seen her wear before. I didn't say a word. I just followed her into the bedroom and caught her trying to hide her phone. I grabbed it before she could snatch it away, looked at the screen, and saw the same explicit messages and pictures. Her face went pale for a brief second, but she quickly recovered, throwing a bitchy glare at me. That's when I knew her confidence was cracking and I was finally starting to break through her defenses. I confronted her right then and there, with all the evidence laid out on the table. Her response: denial, 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 until I showed her the photos, the texts, the hotel receipts. Her whole act of "it's just sex, we're just friends," and "it didn't mean anything," crumbled in front of her. She looked at me with pure contempt, like I was dirt beneath her feet. She called me insecure, said I was jealous, that I was overreacting because I couldn't handle losing her. That was her favorite line, trying to paint herself as the victim, as if I was the one who betrayed her. I just stared at her, feeling a mix of disgust and unrelenting rage. It was clear she was trying to spin her usual bullshit, but I wasn't having it. I told her I was done, that I knew everything and I wasn't going to be her fool anymore. I told her I was going to file for divorce, that I was going to send her a message she'd never forget. I wanted her to understand that her actions had consequences, that she couldn't just lie her way out of the mess she'd made. I knew she was pregnant with my brother's kid, and I told her that I'd be fighting for full custody, for my dignity, and for the truth to come out. The look on her face was priceless, part anger, part shock, part fear. She realized I wasn't going to let her get away with this. I had all the ammunition I needed now. I was ready to destroy her lies, her manipulations, her entire world if that's what it took. I wanted her to feel the same pain she'd inflicted on me, to see what it was like to be betrayed so thoroughly. She'd always been the bitchy woman who thought she was untouchable, but now she was cornered. And I knew I'd win. Somehow, someway, I'd come out of this stronger than before. I don't know exactly how I'll do it yet, but I do know I'll make her regret ever crossing that line. Because now I'm done playing her game. I'm done pretending I don't see the truth. And I swear I'll walk away from this with my dignity intact, something she'll never be able to take from me again. Just watch. The truth always catches up, and when it does, she'll wish she never messed with me. The day I finally filed for divorce was the day I felt both relief and a heavy weight lift off my shoulders, even though the pain still lingered deep inside. I had gone through hell, seeing her lie, cheat, manipulate, all during what should have been one of the most sacred moments of my life. I never wanted her to think she'd get away with any of it, and now I'd made sure she wouldn't. My lawyer handled most of the legal stuff, but I was there for the custody hearings, pushing hard for full custody of my child because I knew the truth about Emily's character now. She wasn't fit to be a mother, not with all that she'd done. The aftermath was brutal. Emily didn't go quietly, of course. She tried every trick in the book. She pleaded, she begged, she even tried to manipulate the judge, but I had the evidence, the witnesses. I was calm, steady, and I knew what I wanted. I wasn't going to let her get away with destroying what little was left of my family. The court awarded me full custody, and she was left with visitation rights, which she barely deserved. Still, I made sure she paid for her actions, emotionally and financially. What really hit me hard was seeing her pregnant with my brother's kid, knowing I'd lost everything: my wife, my family, my trust. That image haunted me for a long time. But over the months, I started to rebuild. I focused on my work, on my health, on my child, and on healing what I could. The pain didn't disappear completely, but it became manageable. I learned that betrayal cuts deep, but it doesn't have to define you. I cut out all the toxic influences, stopped talking to her entirely, and blocked her from my life. Looking back now, I realize I've grown stronger because of it. I see her for what she really is: a manipulative, selfish woman who thought she could get away with anything. And I'm proud I didn't let her win. I learned that trust is fragile, and once broken, it takes a long time to mend. But I also learned that you can survive the worst kind of betrayal and come out the other side more cautious but wiser. To anyone going through something similar, here's what I'd say: trust your gut. Don't ignore the signs, no matter how small. People will lie, cheat, and manipulate, especially when they think they can get away with it. Protect yourself emotionally and legally. Gather evidence, and don't be afraid to stand your ground. Revenge isn't about hurting someone back. It's about reclaiming your dignity, your peace, your future. And in the end, you'll realize that the only person who truly matters in your healing process is yourself. You have to want to move on, and you have to believe you deserve better. I do now. And I hope someday she'll realize what she lost, what she threw away, by betraying someone who truly loved her.